The movie is set in 1980 at the Pearl Harbor Naval Base in the United States. Warren Lasky, a systems analyst for Tittman Industries, serves as an efficiency expert for the Department of Defense. At the request of his boss, Mr. Tittman, he is sent to the aircraft carrier USS which is conducting exercises in the Pacific Ocean. Lasky is informed that Mr. Tittman wishes to bid him farewell, but the enigmatic figure never gets out of his car. Upon arriving on board, Lasky meets Captain Matthew Yelland and other crew members, who are clearly worried about having a stranger on board against their will. He is invited to dine and is assigned by a corporal to the navigator's cabin adjacent to the captain's room. While exploring, Lasky comes across a manuscript about World War II on a table. His investigation is interrupted when Commander Dick Owens enters. Owens, the owner and author of the cabin, expresses his displeasure at Lasky's intrusion and asks him not to repeat it. Meanwhile, the military detects an unexpected storm approaching despite earlier forecasts of clear weather. Radio contact between the aircraft carrier and their bases is lost due to interference. The meteorological officer alerts Captain Yelland that the water temperature has dropped without compression, in fact, increasing rather than decreasing. Additionally, clouds form and dissipate erratically, leaving the weather officer perplexed by the phenomenon. The captain urgently orders a novice pilot to land, but a mysterious vortex approaches the ship. At that moment, the ship sails through a peculiar electromagnetic storm that confounds the crew. The storm ends as abruptly as it began, and the military regains composure. Captain Yelland then declares a state of emergency. All crew members take their positions and successfully land the novice pilot, who had lost control of his fighter aircraft. However, the military soon realizes that their radars and other equipment are malfunctioning, which had caused the loss of radio communication with the Communications Command at Pearl Harbor. They order Owens to send a helicopter and a reconnaissance plane to the base, then gather the commanders of all units, suspecting that the strangeness might be due to a nuclear attack. Suddenly, they manage to capture a radio transmission from the 1940s that had confused the military. Shortly thereafter, a ship is seen near the USS, and the captain also sends planes to investigate. We then transport back to 1941. Senator Samuel Chapman is aboard a cruise yacht, listening to a radio broadcast and discussing politics with his friend Arthur. Also on board are the senator's secretary, Laurel Scott, and his dog Charlie. Soon the excited dog rushes to the deck and barks. Looking up at the sky while two F-14 fly overhead, the pilots inform the captain that they have seen an old, well-preserved yacht flying the flag of the United States. Yelland orders them to continue observation and sends refueling aircraft. Meanwhile, aboard the USS, the crew listens to the only available radio broadcast, which transmits a boxing match from 40 years ago. Lasky speculates that everything happening could be part of a secret naval maneuver, but Yelland is convinced that it is impossible. However, Commander Dan Thurman believes that Lasky was sent to them for a reason. He thinks the Department of Defense wants to show Lasky something. Yelland agrees with that theory, but the expert insists that he knows nothing and doesn't understand anything. Then, the surprised military personnel receive news by radio about battles near Moscow. "What the hell is going on here?" Yelland exclaims as he receives aerial reconnaissance photographs of Pearl Harbor and is astonished. One of the images shows the battleship Arizona still intact despite its destruction by the Japanese. Convinced that Lasky might be hiding information, Yelland summons him, demanding the whole truth. Despite Yelland's insistence, Lasky maintains his innocence, claiming ignorance, and Yelland then shows him the baffling recent photos. After deliberation, Lasky proposes comparing them with Owens' archival images for his book. Surprisingly, the images match identically, even though they were taken in 1941 and depict objects that were later destroyed. Meanwhile, 14 houses or units are detected fueling in the air, and they pick up 2 Japanese Mitsubishi houses. The American pilots quickly report to the captain, who orders continuous tracking of their trajectory. Yelland and the commanders, along with Lasky, strive to unravel the enigma unfolding before them. Someone, for some reason, wants them to believe that they have now returned to 1941. Who wants that? Thurman blames the Russians for the events that transpired, while Lasky puts forward a radical notion: the possibility that they have been inexplicably transported through time. The military dismisses this idea as implausible. Meanwhile, enemy combatants approach the senator's yacht. The passengers watch with curiosity until they discover the Japanese flag on the planes. The enemy opens fire on the yacht, gravely injuring Arthur, a friend of the senator. Astonished, the F-14 pilots report the attack to the captain. Lasky investigates the motive behind the Japanese assault on the yacht. Owens, who appears amused by the time travel theory, suggests that the Japanese intend to eliminate all radio-equipped objects that could warn Pearl Harbor of the imminent danger. To test this hypothesis, Yelland orders Wenz to identify the exact location of the Japanese forces in 1941 and sends an E-2 reconnaissance plane to investigate. The pilots request permission to intervene and thwart the Japanese assault on the yacht and its remaining passengers, but the captain forbids any interference. Senator Chapman and his secretary Laurel witness, in horror, the return of the Japanese houses. Fortunately, Lou escapes with the dog Charlie. While the Japanese make another attempt to attack the immobilized yacht, the F-14S observe their advance towards the USS NITS. Captain Yelland authorizes a counterattack in a successful engagement. The pilot shoots down 2 enemy planes and reports that 2 civilians from the yacht and 1 Japanese pilot have survived the skirmish. Meanwhile, the E-2 aircraft detects 456 objects on the Japanese fleet's radars, all heading southwest. Alarmed by this discovery, the captain orders Commander Owens to assemble a rescue team and secure the survivors. Commander Thurman is tasked with overseeing the security of the rescue operations, while the remaining crew members are assigned to closely monitor the movements of the Japanese soldiers. "Do you still think this is a dream? It's a nightmare," someone exclaims. Senator Laurel and her dog are hoisted onto the helicopter deck from the water. Chapman watches the helicopter in astonishment and curiosity, eager to know the origin of his rescuers. Owens informs him about the USS NITS, and when he realizes that dear Chapman is present, he is left speechless. Subsequently, the rescue team retrieves the Japanese survivors before returning to the aircraft carrier. Captain Yelland examines the personal effects of the Japanese and orders the translation of his notebook, while L2, an officer designation, continues his surveillance of enemy movements, revealing an important Japanese fleet heading towards Pearl Harbor. Yelland convenes Wenz, Thurman, and Lasky to determine the next course of action. Thurman advocates a preemptive strike against the enemy to safeguard Pearl Harbor. However, Yelland hesitates to initiate hostilities, citing the absence of aggression on their part. Lasky suggests that his access to advanced technology, not available in 1941, presents extraordinary opportunities to alter the course of events. Owens remains skeptical, but Lasky points out that they have already altered events by saving people who were meant to perish. After deliberation, Captain Yelland decides to adhere to regulations that prioritize preventing any threat, regardless of the temporal context. During the interrogation of the Japanese, the medic visits Chapman and Laurel to assess their condition following the incident. Chapman is enraged by the implication of an accident, convinced of a deliberate attack on the yacht, and demands a meeting with Captain Yelland to address the matter, only to find himself locked in after the medic departs, troubled by the situation. Lasky revisits Owens' cabin to examine his manuscripts once more. Shortly afterward, Owens returns to his cabin and discovers that the manuscript is missing. He confronts Lasky, demanding an explanation and provocatively hinting at his own interest in altering history. Reading the manuscript, Lasky underscores Owens' regret over Chapman's disappearance and theorizes about his possible role in Roosevelt's presidency. Owens vehemently denies any involvement. The bewildered Senator Chapman shares his suspicions with Laurel, questioning the origins of the sailor's armaments and equipment, as well as the name of his aircraft carrier, allegedly named in honor of Admiral Nimitz. Owens, still alive, and Lasky approach the senator, but their interaction is interrupted by the dog running out of the cabin. Seizing the distraction, a Japanese pilot snatches an M16 rifle from an incapacitated guard, incapacitates 2 others, and then holds Laurel, Owens, and Lasky hostage, making unclear demands that cannot be understood without a translator. Cautiously, Owens summons the military translator Kojima by phone. Once he understands the pilot's demands, Kojima explains the need for access to the radio to warn the Japanese fleet about the USS NITS, threatening to cause harm otherwise. Reluctantly, Captain Yelland agrees, but the distrustful pilot maintains control over the hostages, and Yelland asserts that radio access will only be granted once Laurel is released. Faced with skepticism, Lasky proposes revealing the secret plans of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Owens, surprised, asks how the Americans obtained such information by momentarily lowering their guard. Owens escorts Laurel to his cabin, assuring her of his commitment to finding her missing dog, Charlie. Their interaction reveals growing mutual sympathy. Meanwhile, Senator Chapman reels from the revelations of the impending attack and demands answers from Yelland, who insists on informing the Pearl Harbor Command. The captain reluctantly agrees when attempting to establish communication with the base. Chapman identifies himself aboard the USS Nitz with Captain Yelland. However, his claims are met with skepticism since there is no record of a ship named Nitz or anyone by the name of Yelland. Indignant at the dismissive treatment, Chapman demands immediate transport to Pearl Harbor along with Laurel, to which Yelland hesitates to comply with Lasky's suggestion. It is noted that the senator disappeared on that very day in 1941, suggesting that it is safer to keep him aboard the USS NITS. Yelland opts for an alternative plan, ordering Owens to transport the civilians to an isolated Hawaiian island, providing them with the necessary supplies to avoid interfering with their operations, while addressing the entire crew of the aircraft carrier. Yelland clarifies that the events are not due to a nuclear attack or a Third World War, but rather a mysterious storm that opens a portal to another temporal era, emphasizing the opportunity to alter the course of events. He gathers the crew to prepare for the imminent attack by the Japanese fleet. The plane lands on the desolate island where the senator realizes he has been deceived. He takes a rocket launcher and forces the pilots to transport him to Pearl Harbor, leaving Laurel and Owens behind. The pilots comply with the senator's demands and take off, setting the stage as the USS NITS planes rise into the air to launch a formidable attack against the enemy fleet. An inexplicable storm materializes once more in the path of the aircraft carrier, just minutes before the attack, and Yelland orders the planes to withdraw and abort the assault. Routine operations in 1980 resume. Lasky bids farewell to the military and departs with Charlie, the dog that travels through time by his side, and Yelland laments Owens' inability to return to the present from the enigmatic island. Suddenly, Lasky sees the familiar black car that had escorted him aboard the aircraft carrier. Charlie frees himself and jumps into the vehicle. Curious, Lasky approaches the car and finds the mysterious Mr. Tittman and his wife, only to be surprised when he recognizes older versions of Owens and Laurel. With a smile, they extend an invitation for Lasky to join them, as they have much to discuss.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.